You know, Jesus doesn't always make it easy for us to understand him, does he? I mean, in Luke's very first chapter, it says of Jesus that he came, quote, to guide our feet into the way of peace, unquote. Then at the very end of that same book, Jesus blesses his followers saying, peace be with you. In between, he tells the woman with the hemorrhage, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And in Matthew, he proclaims to the crowd in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Peace, peace, peace. It seems to be everywhere. And yet now, in today's gospel, Jesus has this to say. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. For now, from now on, 5 in a household will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. Really, Jesus? Peace, not division? Not peace, but division? What's going on? I mean, let me ask you, is this really how you think of Jesus? As bring not peace, but division? I don't. Just the opposite. I think of him as bringing unity, connection, harmony, fellowship, togetherness. In a word, peace. Yes, peace, not division. After all, isn't love the very foundation of Jesus' message? Love of God, love of neighbor, love of self? Love and division together? Really? Really? Is it possible to have division and still have love? Huh. Now there's a question for you. Is it possible to have division and still have love? I wonder. Let's stay with that a moment. Love and division, are they related at all? Are they? Well, let's see. Who do we all love the most? We'd all have to say our family and friends, wouldn't we? And yet, who do we quarrel with the most? We're most likely to quarrel with our family and friends too, aren't we? I mean, take my wife, Sandra, and me. I love Sandra dearly. She's the center of my life, the love of my life. And yet, we have occasional moments of a sort of verbal pushing and pulling as we sort out some little misunderstanding, talking it through, working it out. I'd say that 99.9% of the time, we do this calmly and reasonably, with gentleness and understanding, and even humor. But there is that 0.1%, the rare upset, the occasional hurt feeling, the brief period when rather than feeling unified and connected as a result of this discussion, we feel isolated from each other. We feel separate and alone. In a word, divided. So there it is. Love and division. There is a connection. And not only that, but based on my experience, I'd have to say that the connection is not accidental. The division doesn't happen because the love has broken down. Just the opposite. It's because the love is very much alive. And because it's alive, it's growing. Those occasional times of misunderstanding and divisions are a part of that growth. Growth is how we keep love vital and responsive. But to have growth, you have to have growing pains too. They're never easy, never pleasant, and yet they're how we are able to stay with each other as both adjust to all the shifting circumstances of our lives. Such times may not feel like love, but they are. They have to happen. It's true. Those times of division have to happen. They are an unavoidable requirement of keeping love alive and vital. As paradoxical as it sounds, in order to keep love healthy and alive, we must be willing to disagree with each other. I strongly suspect that is what Jesus is getting at. It's what he wanted us to learn. He came among us to teach us to love, after all. He came to teach us what love is, first of all, a gift of God, a gift of God's own self. But he also came to teach us how to love. And to do that, we must, among other things, be willing to disagree. Jesus wanted us to know that. He wanted to tell us that it's okay to disagree. In fact, it's not only okay, there are times when it is destructive not to disagree. We all know this. We all know how damaging it can be when a person consistently avoids saying something important to someone they care about because they're afraid that it will lead to conflict, and they know that conflict can hurt a relationship. The trouble is, as time goes by and more things go unsaid, soon there's an entire mountain of hidden feelings and unspoken subjects. The mountain comes to dominate the relationship, standing between them and all those involved, controlling everything they do, everything they say. People often refer to this as the elephant in the room that no one will acknowledge, but which forces everyone to act strangely and awkwardly as they go to great length to try to function around it. Such a situation isn't just uncomfortable, it's destructive to love. It means the love is being slowly strangled. Love thrives on openness, after all, on openness, honesty, vulnerability, and truth. It suffocates among secrets, silence, and lies. It becomes essential then to acquire the skills that allow for there to be disagreement and difference without that degenerating into conflict and separation. Fortunately, there is a way to do this. There is a way to have disagreement without conflict. All it requires is this: listening. Try it and see. Whenever you disagree, whenever you become aware of difference, always do this. Begin to listen to the other as closely and as fully as possible. This means don't just listen to the words, listen to the feelings too. Try to hear not only what the other person is saying, but also why what they are saying is important to them. Try to hear what they hope for. Try to hear what they're afraid of. Try to hear what it all means to them. Listen. I can't say it enough. Listening is the key. It's the key to love. Sometimes I think that this is the only really important thing that I've ever learned in my life. That listening is the key to love. Certainly it's the one thing that God seems to have most wanted to teach me. And I can see why. Listening changes everything. Listening turns disagreement into a source of growth and understanding rather than conflict and separation. This is essential because it's true. Conflict can strain a relationship. Worse, if it leads to separation, it can kill it. Listening makes it possible to disagree without either of these things occurring. In other words, just because two people feel divided does not mean that they should have to abandon each other and isolate. Just the opposite. They should work all the harder to try to stay connected. That way, they can keep talking. And more importantly, keep listening. This is something, by the way, that Sandra and I long ago promised we will always do on those rare occasions when we feel divided and isolated from each other. We'll stay close and keep listening. It works for us. But the truth is, this is something our whole nation needs to learn right now and needs to learn it badly. The problem with our country isn't that we disagree with each other. It's not even that we have so many differences. Americans have always disagreed. It's one of the reasons why this is such a great land, because people can disagree and are allowed to disagree. And of course there are differences. America has always had differences. It's those differences that have made us so strong, so vital, so creative. What's changed, though, is that we've now begun to turn those disagreements into conflict and to see our differences as an excuse to separate from one another. Not only have we stopped talking to one another, we've stopped listening to one another. And that's deadly. And it can't last. Not if our nation's going to survive. So love and division, they really are connected, aren't they? They're so connected, in fact, that as it turns out, you really can't have love unless you are willing to accept that you're also going to have some disagreements and differences at times too. I guess it really isn't so surprising then to hear Jesus say that he came to bring division. Of course he did. He came to bring love, after all. So naturally, he would also bring the tools that make that love possible. We just need to know what those tools are. We need to know that we should not fear disagreement or differences, while also learning how to prevent those disagreements from degenerating into conflict or make those differences an excuse to separate. And always we must remember that the key to everything is listening. Listening. It's the greatest gift we can give a person. It's also the greatest gift we can give ourselves. And how do we know that? Because God never stops listening to us. Even now, God is listening. God is with us. God is here. Amen.